Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. We're your hosts, Bull and P, and in today's video, we're just going to be talking about Tennessee football, just straightforward stuff. So please make sure to like and subscribe. P, the first thing that I want to talk about is with EA Sports 2025 college football. It sounds like, okay, based off of what we've been hearing from this guy, Matt Brown, who was on, he was on a YouTube video with On3, and I don't know if you heard about this or not, but he was basically saying that the cover. He said that there's going to be, multiple different covers. Sounds like maybe 4 to 5 different ones. He says that it's going to be, a player from a different position from each Power 4 conference. So, just understand that he's an insider. The way that he kind of said it made it sound like the quarterback, and he said that there's only going to be one quarterback is going to be coming from the Big 12. And he was saying, and, let's just say if there's an SEC pass rusher. So I know a lot of people have been kind of speculating on, will Tennessee have a player on the cover? It's also only going to be current players. It's no old players. It's no coaches. I would think, okay, and you tell me what you think too, P, but I would think that James Pierce should have a good chance to get on at least one of them covers if there's going to be 4 to 5 different variations of it. But what do you think about that?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I seen that same video you're talking about, and I thought the same thing when I heard it. Because he said, SEC may have a pass rusher. I immediately think, okay, this guy saying James Pierce is going to be the cover.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I mean, I think James Pierce, I'm trying to think. I can't think of any household names at the pass rusher position, maybe outside of James Pierce, who we've seen him projected as #1 overall draft pick, potentially, definitely a top 5 guy in the 2025 draft. So, I mean, to me, it makes sense. And that'd be pretty cool to have a Tennessee guy on the cover. Game comes back after, 10 years or so, and we got a Tennessee guy that's one of those covers. I think he has every opportunity to be able to do it. So, yeah, I thought the same way. I think James Pierce has a real shot this year.
Yeah, and I mean, really, if you think about it, he's like the premier defensive player in the entire country, like not just in the SEC, like not just on our team, but in the entire country. And I mean, he's actually right now, he's got the highest rating by most of these analysts and all that type of stuff of any player in the entire country, period. So I think that he's got a really good shot. And I want to say that he would be the first Tennessee player to be on the cover of this video game. So that would be huge for us. And then next season, we may end up having Nico on there after he wins the Heisman this year. So I think that that would be I think that would be a whole lot of fun. I think that it will bring a whole lot of hype to this program, which is definitely much needed because we're starting to trend back kind of like how we did back in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like up under Former where, I mean, we literally, everyone knows about Tennessee and, we've seen the movies and stuff that would feature Coach Former. And as soon as he's coming in, all the other teams just pretty much gave up. I think that we're kind of getting back to that. We're also doing a great job of, identifying talent across the country. Whole lot of buzz from, doesn't matter if it's, anywhere in the 50 states, we are finding players and they like us. So I think that that's big. But whenever, he kind of was talking about there's going to be one quarterback, a lot of people are thinking that it could end up being Carson Beck. Now, we don't know for sure if it is just going to be their quarterback from the Big 12. But what do you think about that? Like, do you think that Carson Beck would be the, guy in college football right now to have his face on the cover of this video game as a quarterback?
Well, I'll tell you this. If it's going to be Carson Beck, it better be him with the helmet on, okay? Because hey, he ain't much to look at with his helmet off. I think we're right. I think you're right with your assumption that it's going to be a Big 12 guy. I believe Colorado's in the Big 12 this season. We've heard rumors about Shedeur Sanders being the guy. I think that he fits that a little bit better. Just kind of, I can see him. Colorado has those kind of plain jerseys. I can see him that #2. I can see him being the cover. I can see him being one of the covers. I'll go with Shedeur Sanders before I went for Carson Beck. But, you never know. Carson Beck's probably, a lot of people look at him as maybe the best quarterback returning this season, kind of in the league this year. But, I don't know. I just, maybe I'm biased, but I just don't see those god-awful red and gray, jerseys being on the cover of NCAA. I just don't see it.
Yeah. So you know what? Like, let's just say this, right? Because I think that we're on the same page with that. If you're going to pick out one quarterback right now throughout the entire country, the face would have to be Shedeur Sanders. And I don't know how much that's going to happen at this point with the back and forth on Twitter. I don't think that he, kind of jumped out the window as bad as Coach Prime did. But I would say that he's probably, if there is only going to be one quarterback, he would be my pick personally. Again, that's from a national perspective because he has that face. Everyone knows him. Not everyone knows Carson Beck. And we're talking about people outside of football. But there's some other quarterbacks. Like, let's just say if it is in the SEC, who else could it be? I'm gonna throw out a name like Quinn Ewers, right? So him playing at Texas, I think that they look really good. We know that Arch Manning ain't gonna be on there because he's opted out of the game, but I think that he looked good too. And I want to talk about Texas and some of these other teams, but outside of that, who else do you see from the SEC that maybe could kind of jump onto the cover?
Well, immediately, a guy like Graham Mertz kind of comes to mind, and not necessarily he's a guy or anything, but I don't know. It's like he kind of has that look, kind of your prototypical. You think about NCAA football, you have your create a team, kind of like that generic Tribune or wherever that team was that what I'm talking about, Tribune, whatever. Kind of like that generic type of guy. Carson Beck, you mentioned Jackson Dart, but outside of those guys, I mean, who are you looking at? A guy like Brady Cook from Mizzou. I mean, there's not really anybody that really wows you. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of anybody's pick. I mean, I feel like Nico's better than all those guys.
Yeah, I do too. But, I think that the biggest thing is with, whenever you're talking about video games, especially sports video games, a lot of the people playing it don't know anything about football, right? Like they know nothing about it. They just want to play it just to have fun and, kind of feel like they are playing it. So it's going to be to me like who's like that sexy name, right? Or, who's the player that kind of like has that buzz. And it's not a whole lot of them. I mean, Jackson Dart, for us that know about football, he would be one of those names just because he's a baller, right? Like you could tell he's just got that swag to him. So I could throw him out there. But part of the reason that I said Quinn Ewers was because his team was in the playoffs last season. And out of the teams that were in the playoffs, all those quarterbacks are gone outside of him and Alabama's quarterback. So Alabama's quarterback, maybe you could see him get up there. But I mean, he hasn't done a whole lot, right? Like he hasn't put up crazy numbers. So I don't know. I do think that it's probably going to have to be an out of conference type of a guy, or it's going to be Carson Beck. But either way, I do think that Tennessee is in a really good spot to be able to at least get James Pierce on one of those covers. I definitely think that that's going to happen. But while we're just kind of talking about all these different teams, we have been watching some of these spring games and stuff, and, had kind of been talking about Texas. I just want to talk about the top rosters in the SEC and maybe even in the country at this point. I'm just going to go ahead and go first, P. I'm going to tell you right now, for me, I would say that Texas is definitely up there, Ohio State and Georgia. I think that they're kind of like in a league of their own. And we're talking about top to bottom rosters, right? Like they're very, very deep. We talk about teams that have multiple quarterbacks, which I don't think is necessary, but they have multiple everything. Like they're just 3 to 4 deep at every single position on the entire field. But what do you think about that? Would you throw another team in there, or what would your top like 1A tier be?
Yeah, I mean those are probably my same top three. Honestly, I mean Texas look really good, look very athletic on defense. I mean they got guys over the field. Offense, I mean you talked about it. Multiple quarterbacks. They got 3 guys that could probably go out there and start for a lot of teams. Got playmakers at receiver. I like their running back room. Don't know those guys by name, but just watch them in the spring game. They have explosive guys that can create, make guys miss. They look really good. I think, I was kind of a little bit slow to believe the hype on these guys. People were kind of hyping them up kind of after last season. But I think they are a legitimate team and arguably are the best roster in the country. Obviously Georgia's the same way. I mean, they got a bunch of guys, both sides of the ball, 5 stars across the board. And in Ohio State, I mean, you see them. They got receivers, they got quarterbacks, they got running backs, they got offensive line, they got skill guys. They added Caleb Downs from Alabama, arguably the best player on defense in the country. Probably him and James Pierce are right there in that conversation. They add him to their roster. A guy who's been coached by Nick Saban, for a full season, comes in as a true sophomore. I mean, those are probably the best rosters I've seen. Another team that kind of caught my eye is FSU. Florida State looked pretty good. Now, offense, don't really know. DJU didn't look great, but I think their defense, watch out for them, have one of the best defenses in the country this season. They look solid. Kind of outside those guys, I mean, nobody really wowed me. I've seen a little bit of Mizzou, turned it off because they were doing that kind of that, 2-hand touch deal.
Yeah.
Miami wasn't super impressed with those guys. This seemed like a prototypical team that's going to have the pieces, but heck, you guys are in Miami. How focused are you? How locked in are you? You know what I mean? They kind of have that vibe to them.
Yeah.
So no one I saw that really kind of jumped off the page at me outside of the teams that we mentioned. And like I said, I think FSU's defense looks like it's going to be pretty good this season.
Yeah. So you know what? I think that that's a really good list. And so so we're on the same page with the top 1A tier. Up under that is when, I'll start throwing in teams like Ole Miss, Florida State, Oregon. I would throw Tennessee into that mix as well. I'm trying to think. You know what? I would actually throw Oklahoma in that same mix. I would throw LSU in there whenever you're just talking about talent. A lot of people seem to be sleeping on Oklahoma at this point. Heard that there's some issues with the offensive line. I watched them play going up against the front that looked pretty good to me. I know that they got some good players up there. And I wasn't, they didn't look like a bunch of slouches. I was not like, oh, like there's a bunch of holes here. I think the Oklahoma is going to be a team that's going to shock a lot of folks. As quiet as it's kept, a team like Texas A&M, I was pretty impressed with what I saw from them as well. Man, look, they got this end. I think he came from the Big Ten. He's the real deal, dude. I mean, he's very impressive. He looks like he's about 6'4", 6'5", close to 300 pounds. Huh?
Number 4?
I think he's number 11. Anyway, yeah, but he is the truth, okay? He's a first-round pick for sure. He actually puts me a lot in the mind of the player from Mizzou last year. Is it what, Darius? That guy? He's very similar to that, but I would even put him like a couple of notches over that. They're going to be a problem, okay? Like, I'm telling you, I think that he's going to be much more of a consistent player too, whenever he's out there. Now, he is a little bit bigger, so you're going to have to take him off the field sometimes. But in those situations, he's going to be a big-time problem. So I think that there are so many teams that are kind of, well, not so many, but there's several teams that are kind of in that tier. And I'm going to tell you, another team that I was impressed with is Michigan. I watched them play. They look pretty much the exact same way. How much of that is, coming off of a national title and, from what, their head coach from last season left them with. Now, is this new coach going to come in and kind of wash away some of that stuff and get them, going in a different way, like get them kind of playing a little bit worse? We don't know about that, but I could tell you as far as the spring game goes, I was impressed with them as well. So there's several teams that are, in the same tier as Tennessee, and we've got the teams that are a little bit higher than us. I just want to talk about this, P. What does Tennessee need to do to either get up to that tier with that, in that 1A tier with those top 3 teams? But also, what do we need to do this season with the current roster and the players that are coming in to be able to win a national title? And we can, maybe even dissect it. Let's just talk about defense first. What do you think this defense needs to do? We can go from the first level to the second level to that third level.
Well, honestly, I think you look at our starting 22. Okay, we'll focus on defense. Our starting 11, I think, is as good as you'll find in the country. I don't think we take a backseat to anybody with our starters. Okay, I think where you get into a little bit of a kind of that questionable area is, well, heck, Keenan Peely and Arion Carter went down. Now who's your 2 linebackers? Okay. Oh, heck, Josh Turntine or Andre Turntine and freaking Jacoby Thomas went down. Now who's your starting safeties? Or, same with the corners. Who's your starting corners? I think the depth is still a question. And it's not guys that aren't, uncapable. I think it's just guys that need to go out there and prove it. Even Ricky Gibson, who's going to be a starter probably for us, haven't really seen him do it. We saw T-Lander do it, at back. We've seen Arion Carter. We've seen a little bit of Peely. Can Peely stay healthy? I don't know. We've seen Arion Carter for one season. He missed the latter half of that season. Can he stay healthy for a full season? I don't know. Do you trust a Caleb Perry? Do you trust true freshman Evan Spillman, who we love what we've seen from him? Can he do it, in a real live game situation? I think that's when Tennessee takes the next step, whenever they have guys, second, third string that are truly guys you feel like you can count on, depend on. Yeah. And in today's game of college football, it's a little bit different because you don't really have guys sticking it out. We see Elijah Herring hitting the portal, a guy that would have been a solid depth piece for us. These guys that are good that aren't playing, they're typically leaving. I think, Texas, Georgia to some degree as well, and even Ohio State, they were kind of good before we really hit this transfer portal era.
Yeah.
And so they kind of have some depth. They kind of have that culture established where they have depth that's there and that's ready to play, that's not necessarily going to transfer out. I've seen Georgia, they got a guy who's, I think, a backup linebacker, number 11, and, they're comparing him to a Micah Parsons. And seriously, and you go watch him play, he's every bit of that. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, if he came to us, it'd be him and Keenan Peely, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, he's, they got those type of guys on the roster, and we know KJ Bolden at safety, not even starting, 5-star guy, true freshman. They have those type of guys. So I think we just got to continue to recruit, continue to build that roster to get to that point. But I think we're right there. Like I said, our starting 22 can compete with anybody, I think.
Mhm.
But it's when you start to, hey, God forbid you have an injury or two, or a guy squat because the helmet came off or whatever. That's when the question marks kind of start to rise for me.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying because I feel the exact same way. But I think that the difference, well, you know, but I said the same thing last season. I was like, man, I feel like our starters can kind of go out there and play with anybody. And we may not have quite been there. You know what I'm saying? Well, I think I said that earlier on. But then we did see that the wide receiver core, and I know we haven't really gotten the offense yet, but the wide receiver core just was not what we expected it to be. We had some key injuries there. Brew going down. Dante doesn't pick it up until, he goes down. And then, we've got Squirrel and everybody else was just like, not making catches, not playing with that umph and with that effort. And I think that a big part of the reason for that was because there wasn't that much competition like you just talked about, P. Now I feel like this entire team, we are too deep. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like outside of quarterback, where obviously there's going to be a pretty, sizable drop off, but it's not going to be something that's going to be extremely detrimental to this team because Gaston Moore can run this offense. He can operate, right? He may not be able to make all those special plays, but he's going to find the open people. He's going to know how to get the ball out of his hand. I feel like we do have enough talent at this point where, if something like that happens where Gaston has to play, we're not going to say, hey, this is still a playoff team. But the team is still going to be, I would say, maybe like 9-3, even with Gaston Moore. So I would say that 9-3 is our floor. But whenever you're just talking about getting to that upper echelon where you are at every single position, 3 to 4 deep, because defensive line, we know that we're deep all the way to the freaking bones, right? I mean, all the way back, everybody can ball. Linebackers, yeah, like we're not as deep, but at the same time, you only play, really, you're probably only going to rotate 4, maybe 5 guys in a season. And like you said, P, as long as we stay healthy, we should be fine there. If we have, somebody go down or something like that, I feel pretty comfortable and confident with the type of athletes that we have that we can still come out and sustain relatively about the same amount of, or the same level of gameplay if somebody goes down, as long as it's just one. If we lose 2, then we're going to be in really bad shape. But I also think that our secondary will take that step forward. There's a whole lot of players that are unproven, whether it's just playing football period or whether it's playing with this team, playing in the SEC. But we've got some guys that we've seen on film that look like they can lock down whoever they're going to be guarding. And they also are physical. They've got, all of the, skill sets necessary to contribute to this team in a very major way. I think that the secondary will take that step forward, more specifically because of those safeties. Whenever you talk about the middle of your defense, I really love Kobe Thomas, right? Coming from Middle Tennessee State, love this film, love what I've seen from him so far throughout spring. And, I also love Slaughter. I think that he looks really, really good. Turrentine has come on. And, we've got some other players as well that I feel like can step in and be big time for us. But whenever we just, take that step back and talk about what we have to work with and the types of schemes that we might need to play for us to win a national title with this team. And we'll just say maybe like one player goes down for like 1 or 2 games or something, just staying relatively healthy. What do you think this team needs to do on defense for us to get to that, playoff status and then to get to a national championship status?
Well, you said in terms of scheme or just in terms
Yeah,
of
right. Yeah. So like scheme, how these guys need to play, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're super athletic on defense side of the ball. You know what I mean? So anytime you're athletic, that's the D coordinator's dream. Okay, because now you can get creative, you can get exotic. Hey, what we talk about all the time, you can go press man. Okay, heck, I want to have 5 DBs press man. Okay, you guys can go press man, and now I don't have to worry about anybody. Now the rest of the other 6 guys, we can rush them. Okay, we can get exotic, we can fake rush, we can drop. I think the better that secondary plays, the more creative you can be. But I think it's has to be able to play man coverage. I think that's what comes down to. You got to play man coverage in the back end. You have to be able to not have to devote extra guys to the pass game.
Yeah.
Hey, go mano on the back end. Let your front, 6 or 7, whatever it ends up being. Let those guys kind of play the run, play the quarterback scramble, play that whole deal, and I think you'll be fine. I think you look at our D line, you love what you have there. Okay. From the interior to both edges, we have guys that can rush the passer. So I think that's going to be our bread and butter. That's going to be our MO. We're going to be one of the highest pressure rate teams in the country this year, I believe. That's going to come from the inside, the outside, the whole deal. We got linebackers that can blitz like you wouldn't believe. Talk about Keenan Peely, Jeremiah T-Lander, Aaron Carter, Edwin Spillman, okay, Jordan Burns, a guy I haven't talked about yet, he ain't on campus yet. We love what he shows us on film, okay? So you like what you have there. And again, you talk about the depth. D-line is one of the positions where you feel really good about. Okay, we can rotate guys. Oh, James Pierce is tired. Let's bring in the Caleb Herring. Oh, he's tired. Let's bring in Stavian Bradley. Oh, he's tired. Let's bring in a 5-star true freshman, Jordan Ross. You know,
Hey, and we got Joshua Josephs too.
And hey, I always skip over him for some reason, but yeah, he's another one. You know what I mean? He's another one. So you feel really good. We can get exotic with our packages. That's what I want to say. I want to say is get exotic, get creative. Use the personnel you have. Hey, maybe we take out all those interior D tackles and put in, have our cheetah package, whatever, where it's 4 guys across the front that are going to give you problems.
Yeah.
Or we could even go the opposite and say, hey, let's go stop the run. Maybe James Pierce takes a seat. Tyree Weathersby bumps over his position. We have Tyree West or Dominic Bailey over there at the other end. We have big guys on the interior. I mean, we have so many. We're so versatile, I feel like, with our personnel on defense. But I think the main thing is just continue to play like we've played since Tim Banks has been there. Be aggressive, pressure the quarterback, press man. Yeah, I think we'll have one of the best defenses in the country this season.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too, just because you talk about having all that depth up front. You're also talking about that back end playing tighter coverage. It works hand in hand. And then, we've got linebackers that are going to be really good in coverage. That's something that I loved about Keenan Peely's film is that not only does he identify plays quickly, he triggers like instantly, okay? He gets off blocks beautifully, right? Like he can either beat you with speed, beat you with strength. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times that I counted on film watching him at BYU. I mean, shocking offensive lineman coming up to that second level. But he can also play very good pass coverage. He looks great in zone. He can play man. And with him just knowing football well, I just feel like our defense can not only play that man-to-man coverage, but I feel like we can be very effective playing zone and just bringing 4 or, maybe bringing 5. You know what I'm saying? So we can do a lot of different things just because, like you said, P, we're so versatile on that defense. We just have to see them do it, right? Because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, we haven't seen them play. But we've watched them play at other places. We understand how the game will translate, right? Like, I mean, you can just kind of tell. Certain things will always translate to every single level of football. And we've got players who have that. So hats off to the staff for recreating this entire defense. I think that this defense can, I'm just going to be very conservative here, P, and I'm just going to say top 10 next season. But, if everything goes well, if we stay healthy, if guys kind of, get better the way that we think that they will over the summer, I could very easily see this being a top 5 defense, overall. Okay, so that's where we're at that point. Now, let's talk about the offense, because this is really where I think our entire team is going to go, because we run off a tempo. We're going to set the pace, okay? And I think that we've got a lot of players, obviously talking about Nico, who can do it all. Okay, he can make all the throws. He's got great patience, right? I mean, he's got good speed. He's strong. Like, a lot of people have been worried about, is he going to be a guy that gets injured? And, I don't want to claim anything or, whatever, jinx it. But you can just kind of tell by the way that he's just got that inner strength. Like, you can just tell that he's a strong guy. I don't think that's something that we have to worry about. So we're good there. But, whenever you talk about everything else, obviously running back is a big question mark so far. But what do you think that the offense needs to do from a scheme perspective and just from the players out on the field for this to be a playoff caliber team and then to be a championship caliber team?
Well, it really comes down to kind of who this team is. You talk about the running backs. What's our run game look like? You talk about question marks. That might be the biggest question mark on the whole team, maybe outside the O-line, is your running back room. Even your starter and a guy like Dylan Sampson, haven't seen him be the featured guy for a full, 15, 16 game season. Can he sustain for 4 quarters, 60 minutes for a full season? Cam Seldon won't be there for the first quarter or so of the season. Is he a guy that can get out there and do it? We really don't know anything about that running back room, okay? Deshaun Bishop, Khalif Keefe don't know anything about those guys. And then Peyton Lewis don't know anything about him either. Now, we like what we think they're going to be, but they go out there and prove it. So I think that's the first thing is, how confident are we in our run game? How confident are we in our O-line, being able to push guys, move guys, open up holes? And can we be a team we've been in the past, hand the ball off, be one of the, a top 3 or 4 or 5 rushing team in the conference? Can we continue to be that type of team And if we can't, then it really kind of falls on Nico in that kind of loaded receiver room to really spread the field and do the whole deal. I think we've seen Josh Heupel just from the spring game. We saw him attack the middle of the field more. Seems like the playbook may be more open than it was last season. Last year, what the fans complained about, a whole lot of quick screens, getting out to the flats, that whole deal. I think with Nico, we'll see the playbook kind of go back to that 2022 season. You think about Alabama game, that final drive, hitting the hooker, hits Ramil Keaton on a dig, 15, 20-yard dig route. Then he comes back to the other side, hits Brew McCoy, 15, 20-yard dig route. Like those intermediate routes across the middle of the field are there. That opens up so much more. So look for the playbook to be more open, more explosive this season, and for us to take advantage of Nico, his athletic skill set and his ability to throw the ball. But I think when you look at the personnel, similar to the offensive side to the defensive side of the ball, a lot of talent, okay, but just there's still questions. We talk about the running back room, question marks there, quarterback room behind Nico, question marks there. You touched on it earlier. Gatson Moore is a guy we feel very confident in. If we're playing a team like Kentucky or Mississippi State, I feel very confident gets out of those games. But can he help us go out there and beat a Georgia, beat a Bama, beat a Texas in the SEC championship game, something like that? Can he do that? I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a lot from the rest of this team. You know what I'm saying? Especially, you talk about wide receivers, tight ends. I mean, those are two rooms that we feel pretty good about, right? But what do you think about, what do you think we need to get from the wide receivers? I know you kind of talked about making those tough catches over the middle. Having Brew back is going to be big. And then seeing what Coach Pope has been doing, just hitting these guys, getting them used to that thump so that they will focus in on making those catches. I think that whenever you are prepared, then you are going to come out and play and execute with a high level of confidence. So I think that we should be good there. But what are your thoughts about the wide receiver room?
I mean, I like that room a lot. It's still question marks there. I mean, I think we talked about this before, but really Squirrel White may be the only guy where you say, okay, it's now a ton of question marks just because we've seen him do it. Brew McCoy has question marks. We haven't seen Brew McCoy post-injury, so we don't know exactly who he's going to be. Even Chris Brazzell, now I feel good about Chris Brazzell, okay? But if someone on the outside was saying, well, we don't know about Chris Brazzell, I could see why they'd say that because we haven't seen him do it in the SEC yet. So he has to prove it to you. Nathan Thornton, we feel really good about his progress, his growth. Can he go out there and prove it this season? And then, I think the next tier, which can, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but next tier is maybe your Chaz Nimrod, your Caleb Webb. Can they go out there? Can they continue to build off last season? I think very solid, serviceable guys, like them a lot. Then you get to your Mike Matthews and your Brandon Staley. I think Mike Matthews, he's going to have to play. I think this whole thing is predicated off of Coach Heupel, Coach Housley, Coach Pope. What's their willingness to rotate these guys and give these guys a chance to play? Yeah. Because I think Mike Matthews is a guy you have to play him.
And then too, I was just going to say this, right? The same thing could be said about Coach Martinez. We have got to start rotating our cornerbacks and secondary players in at some point in these games. If we're up by 20-some points, get a freshman out there, coach. All right. You know what I'm saying? Get somebody out there right now so that we can start to get these guys ready to play. So that we're not losing people, right? Like we just lost Christian Conyer. I hate to lose him. I think that we're going to be fine there, but you've got to do what Coach G has been doing, right? Like what Coach BJ did for us last season. Rotate guys in. Then all of a sudden you've got some depth. You've got guys coming up that next season that can play. And, your team's going to be a lot better for it, and then they're also happier and they want to stick around. I just had to throw that in there because I think that's something that we kind of overlooked in that last segment with the defense, but we've got to, we had to touch on that. So
that's an excellent point. That's kind of what all this is predicated off of is what's our willingness to rotate these guys, give these guys, because we have a lot of talent in this roster. But the reason we have the questions is because guys like, Dylan Sampson or, whoever, Khalifa Keith, O-line, those backup guys, they haven't got a chance to play. We feel good about their upside, but have they got a chance to play? Haven't seen them, haven't got the experience. So I think for the whole offense, the whole defense as well, the whole team in general, let these backups play. But I feel good about that receiver room, man. Mike Matthews has a chance to be the best of all of them. Brendan Stays a guy that you kind of advocated for him. I was kind of more hesitant to say, hey, I like him, but I think he's a wait and see type of guy in terms of not being able to contribute year one. He has a chance to contribute year one. And then a guy we had never talked about and the guy everybody forgets about, freaking Nathan Laycock. Okay. And, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's funny, we had this conversation. I finally thought of a player that, in my mind, I compare him to the most, and you're going to love the comparison. Freaking Terrell Owens. Okay,
Oh yeah.
6'3",
Yep.
220-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you think about TO, what do you think about? I'll tell you what I think about. I think about catching that hitch, spinning to the outside, DB falls off your hip, and then head down, knees
Yeah.
dry.
Yeah.
Head down, knees dry. Nothing Ned Laycock, that's what I think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's a special player. Now, can he avoid that JJ Peterson syndrome where,
Yeah.
hey, we love you, we love you, we love you, but never gets to play?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. But I think he has a tremendous upside, and potentially at all the guys we just talked about, Brazel, McCoy, Squirrel, Mike Ness, potentially the most talented guy in that room. So love that receiver room, man. Love it to death.
Yeah, well, so you know what? Let me also kind of piggyback off of what you just said, talking about Nathan, because you're right. I mean, he's got a tremendous skill set. He could end up being that Brew McCoy once Brew leaves us next season. With his size, with his strength and all that type of stuff, I just think that someone needs to talk to him, get in his corner. And I don't know what the specifics were or have been for his injuries, but he's going to have to learn how to play through that. You know what I'm saying? If it's something that he can go with, he needs to be going, because what ends up happening is you kind of get used to like any little thing. And again, I'm not saying that that's what he's doing, but what some of these players didn't learn in high school and they learned the hard way in college is that this is really a business, sir, and you're going to have to play hurt. Like, you're going to be playing hurt most of the time. You got to work through that. Like, you're probably not going to be 100% at any point throughout the entire season. Maybe that first couple of weeks you might be, but after that, everybody's hurt and everyone's playing hurt. So he's got to find that. And, again, if this is what's going on with him, if there's something where it doesn't, need surgery, if it's not a real injury, if it's more like he's kind of banged up, maybe like a little, pull here and there, he's got to play through it. So that's what I'm looking for out of Nathan coming up here over the summer.
So
Yeah.
true. I think a part of Nathan's problem, you go back to last season, the clips we saw practice, what'd you see? If we saw 10 clips, 10 clips of them, we probably saw 5 or 6 drops. So I think the drops were an issue. And then I don't know if he really picked up on the playbook or like the option route concept.
Okay.
So I think he needs to grow in those areas as well to really be a suit field.
Yeah. Well, that's something that definitely needs to happen. We've also got Nate Spillman, somebody who he's been looking good. I can tell that he's been picking up weight. He runs really good routes. He's got good hands. I've seen him, out there blocking, doing all those little things right. He's going to get his opportunities. And so he could end up passing up some of these guys if they're not, really pushing it to that next level. But like we kind of talked about earlier on, because of all the competition, we're seeing a lot more strain and fight, and iron sharpens iron. We're seeing that wide receiver room getting better exponentially because of that influx in talent. We say the same thing about the secondary, a big influx in talent. Linebacking core, really everywhere on this team. You're either going to get with the program if you wasn't already on it, or you're going to find somewhere else to go play ball at. And I don't want to see that happen for a guy like Nathan. But, also talking about tight ends, because we haven't really touched on them. How do you feel about that room, P?
I like that room a lot, man. I know we didn't get to see Ethan Davis really in the spring. Didn't see him in the spring game. I don't know if he was still injured. I'm not sure what the deal was. Okay, but he's another guy kind of throwing that conversation with the Keenan Peely or, maybe Nathan Laycock. Hey, can he stay healthy or not? It's a question mark. We love your ability. Can he stay healthy? That's a question mark for him. But I like that room a lot. I think even when you look past the Holden Stases and the, Kitzelmans, the guys we saw in the spring game, the backups, 88, I think, I don't know, that's Browder or one of the other guys.
Browder.
Yeah, Browder, 88 looked good. I mean, he looked good. He looked good. Like, I'm willing to throw him out there. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have, 4 or 5 guys that I think can play that position. And shouts out, tip your hat to, forget the tight end coach's name.
Abe.
Coach Abe. Yeah, Abe. I like him a lot as a coach. Former O-line guy, gets his guys understand the run scheme. Yeah. I mean, you love that guy, man. I think he's a really good coach. Laid back, one of these guys, prototypical. I'm not gonna come up here and be all boisterous and all that. I'm gonna let my work speak for me. Okay, you're gonna learn who I am based off the work that I produce. And I mean, I like him a whole heck of a lot. He's really improved that room, and I feel great about that tight end room.
Yeah, so I think that what they need to do this season for us to, be like a playoff type of team is to, number one, they're going to have to pick up blocks, because we think that the offensive line is going to be solid, especially with all the starters out there. But one of their biggest jobs in this offense is to block. And if we can eat up all the blocks and we don't have to too much worry about the running backs doing it, especially early on, I think that helps us out tremendously, because I still don't trust that running back room as much to be surefire blockers. We'll see what Peyton Lewis does once he gets healthy. I think that Keith's looked pretty good doing it. But Deshaun Bishop and Dylan Sampson, I've seen some good things, but we've got to see it in live action. So tight ends are going to have to be really good in pass protection, and they're going to have to be that safety blanket for Nico in the most critical situations, right? Like they're going to have to be able to take a little 5-yard, hitch or curl or out or whatever and get us that first down, get us those tough yards, take care of the football. And I feel like if, as long as they do that early on while we're kind of getting our confidence levels up for all of the new players, whether they're freshmen or whether they are, transfers, whatever, all the guys that are new have got to get their confidence up. Once the team starts to gel, then I want to look for those tight ends to start, hey, look, we want to start scoring. Okay, so that's something else. Red zone. We want to see them be very dominant in that red zone. All these guys are what, P? 6'5" and up. 6'5" and up, or what, like 245-ish and up. They can all run. They can all play. They're all tough. They're all dogs. Something that I really love about Ethan Davis is that you can tell that he's got an attitude when he plays. This is what you want. This is what you need from all of your football players. You've got to have that dog. I've seen it out of Holden Stays. Definitely seen it out of Kitzelman. So I just want to see them be very efficient in the most critical of moments and turn themselves into that safety blanket for Nico on a consistent basis. And I think that if we do everything that we just talked about, P, I think that this team has the chance to most definitely get there. For sure, I would say playoffs. I don't see any, it would take, if we don't make the playoffs this season, something went terribly wrong, right? Something went horribly wrong. But once we do get into that, playoff tournament, hey, it's anybody's ball game. But I love our odds. I love the way, that this team is constructed and built, because as we've talked about several times on this channel, I feel like we can turn this into, hey, it's going to come down to your quarterback versus Nico, right? And we like Nico versus anybody else in the country. I think that he's going to be one of those ballers that goes out there and makes plays for you, and we should be perfectly fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just how I see it all playing out. And, did you want to talk a little bit more about the guys that we have coming up on campus, because we haven't really got your thoughts about that yet, Pete?
Well, heck, real quick, I want to touch on that O-line too.
Yeah.
You feel good about that starting 5, okay? We had questions about left guard coming into it. I feel better about that. I think Sham Umarov showed us something there. I haven't seen Jackson Lampley, but I feel good about him. But I think, when you get past that starting 5, okay, now you're thankful for guys like Dane Davis, who when he announced his comeback, we said, hey, this is bigger than people realize. So this is a Swiss Army knife. He's a 5-for-5 guy, so he's immediately increased your depth at all 5 positions, because he can play anywhere on the line. He gives you some depth. I think Bryson Lang showed me a little bit there in the spring game. I think he can give you some depth there in the interior of that O-line. But the tackles are kind of my big question mark. Outside of Dane Davis, I'm not sure who our backup tackles are. If God forbid something happens to either of our tackles, or maybe 2 of the guys, right? Dane Davis fills in one spot. Who's that next tackle that comes off the bench? So I don't know. Depth in O-line is a little bit of concern.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because we really don't have great depth at tackle. Can a guy like Bennett Warren, once he comes up on campus, can he give us, can he be that body? Now, we saw him in some of the all-star games and things. Doesn't like he's ready to play SEC ball just yet, but what has he done since then, right? Because those games were months ago. How has he kind of changed his body? How much work has he put in to come in on campus? And then we already know once he gets up on campus, he's going to grow exponentially. So, what are the odds, P, do you think, of him being a guy that we feel comfortable enough as a backup tackle for us from, like week 1?
I think they're pretty decent. I think pretty decent odds. Look at who's on campus. So, it really depends on how it all shakes out. I think Sham Umarov is still could be your kind of your number 2 backup tackle. So look at him and Dane Davis as kind of your.
Yeah. So what if he's playing at guard though? Like if he's starting at left guard, then
I almost think that if Umarov's starting at left guard and say something happens to both tackles, Dane Davis is at 1. I think honestly, what I think they do is they might move Umarov to tackle and put Lampley in there at guard. Like I think they would do that before they put in true freshman Bennett Warren. But I think he will kind of, at least on depth chart, probably be the number 2 guy. I don't know now how willing are they to put him in there. We'll see. Like I said, how much work has he put in the past few months? Is he a guy that can bend his freaking knees? Can he, get his butt behind him and play good sound fundamental football? We'll see. But But I mean, hey, we said this before, talking about Ben Warren is, if he's the guy that's out there in live reps when it counts this season for us, I think that's cause for concern. But, we'll see. Can he improve? And I'm not putting that past him. Very talented kid, big, strong. How much does he improve? We'll see. But, I'd put it at, I don't know, 50% chance that he's the number 2 guy in one of those tackle spots.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's probably going to be more of a long shot for that to happen. I would even go as far as to say maybe, we don't know. I mean, some of the guys that have already been up on campus as true freshmen could kind of be in a better position to win that spot. But I would say maybe by, like the middle of the season towards the end of the season, he could work himself into a spot where, hey, you feel comfortable throwing him out there if you need to. That's really when we would need him anyway, more than likely. But we've also got big Jeremiah Hurd coming up, who could also be playing tackle. Now, I haven't really seen him playing tackle, but just based off of what I have seen from him playing basketball and all that type of stuff, at 6'7", 305-ish pounds, something like that, he's got really good footwork, I think, especially he's got really long arms too. I think that he could be a prototype tackle. But what do you think about him?
Yeah.
I know we're both very excited to see him go to work. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Wouldn't it be something if he comes in here, had him as a 3-star guy or whatever, but put him in offensive tackle, all of a sudden now he should have been on playing in the country. I mean, he has that type of potential. Yeah. Seriously, you talk about 6'8", 310, carries like an absolute dream. I mean, you couldn't create an offensive tackle better than him. You know what I mean? Like if you were to say, hey, dear God, let me paint my perfect offensive tackle. I'm making him 6'8", 310, 320. Like he's perfect, athletic basketball guy. We saw what that did for Darnell Wright. I mean, I think he's going to be D-tackled just because of the depth issues there long term. But I think he's a guy that could potentially make that move over to the offensive side of the ball. I think he comes in and he may immediately step in there. He may be a very natural guy and potentially could. I mean, he could insert as a starter, talking about 2026 season. Like, we like him a lot. I don't see him doing much this year, but his career as he goes, I mean, he's, again, Jordan Ross, the whole deal, Mike Matthews. I'm probably most excited for Jeremiah Hurd, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I think that a big part of that, too, is because we haven't really got to see him play, much football, if any. Yeah. So, but, yeah, you just talked about Jordan Ross, and I know that we kind of touched on him earlier. But to me, he is the guy that a lot of people, this is all just pure speculation, but based off of what we've seen from his first step is ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous. And it's not like he's doing it. He's doing this versus like, all-star kids, right? Like he's doing it in all-star games. Unblockable. You can tell he's got a bad attitude, a lot like James Pierce. Yeah, he's big, he's long. And whenever I say a bad attitude, I don't mean off the field. These are all really good guys off the field. But whenever you step inside them white lines from, snap to whistle, you turn into a completely different person. And we're seeing that with Jordan Ross. He knows how to turn it on. He knows how to turn it off. I think that he's got a really good shot. Okay, P. If somebody was to set the over-under for Jordan Ross's sacks this season at 5.5, what are you going to take? Honestly speaking, what would you take?
I'm taking the over.
Yeah.
I'm taking the over.
I am too.
Yeah, I'm taking the over.
Yeah.
All day long. Yeah. All day long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's we talked about this with him before. Like, I think he steps on campus behind James Pierce is immediately day one the most talented guy behind James Pierce on that edge. And I said this before. You thought it was crazy when I said it the first time. I said, hey, he's about as big as James Pierce already. And I mean, we've seen an All-Star game. This guy's about 240. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that his upside is even higher than James Pierce, which is crazy to even say. But yeah, I mean, depending on how much he gets to play, I think he's gonna get at least 5.5 sacks.
Yeah. So basically, sounds like P. What we're both saying is, hey man, the offense has got to do what they do. We need for players to step up and make those tough catches, make tough plays. Nico has to be Nico, right? Like at least what we would expect for him to be. Just that guy who can make plays, who's going to be a baller. And he's not going to be perfect, y'all. Like we've got to keep that in mind. He's just not going to be perfect. He probably will have some, picks or something like that. But we're going to be a lot better for it. And, you kind of like live with those, with those mishaps because the upper echelon or, the upper end of that is just going to be spectacular. So him doing what he's supposed to do, running backs have got to sustain. Just give us 5 to 7 yards, right? Like just get what's there. And, if a touchdown's there, then take that too. And then, defense, we just got to get pressure on their quarterback, play good, sound, fundamental football, make tackles, play good coverage, basic stuff. So it sounds like this team just needs to do The basic fundamental stuff, offense, defense, special teams, and we should be a playoff team and potentially a national championship team.
Hey, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
I seen on Twitter, I forget the guy's name, something Kane or something like that. He's an Auburn grad.
Uh-huh.
And he made a comment the other day saying that, the team with the best chance to beat Georgia, he said it's not Texas, it's not Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
He said it's Ole Miss.
Oh, wow.
How do you feel about that? Do you put Ole Miss? Do you think they have a better chance to beat those guys than we do this season?
No, I mean, I don't think that personally. I do think that Ole Miss has a good chance to beat them, though. And I honestly feel like that they've got 3 to 4 legitimate games where they could lose. Now, will they lose is kind of yet to be seen, but you got to understand that they're going to Texas. We just talked about how good Texas's roster is. I think that Sarkisian knows how to scheme up games, especially in the regular season. He used to coach here with the Falcons. We've seen what he can do. I mean, he does a great job in those big games. We saw what they did versus Alabama last season, right? So I think that Texas has a really good chance to beat Georgia. They had to go to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has a whole bunch of talent. I kind of feel the same way about Kiffin, kind of like how I do about Sark. He's going to be able to draw up some great games every single season, and he tends to do it versus Georgia every single year. So yeah, I could see them having really good odds. They've also got to go to Tuscaloosa, I think that Alabama has a really good shot at beating them at home as well with a completely new offense, all that type of stuff. But I think that whenever you're talking about these teams, maybe he didn't throw Tennessee in there because we have to go down to Athens, and maybe he's like, oh, well, this is going to be tough for them. I think that Nico is going to perform very well on the road. He just strikes me as that type of a guy that, like, he wants to, and I think that he even said that. Like, I think that he talked about being excited about playing Georgia because he likes to go shut the other crowd up. That's what you love to hear out of the leader of your team. That energy carries throughout the rest of the team. So I think that Tennessee does have a chance to kind of shock the world in a very tough game on the road down there in Athens because we've got Nico and we've got a bunch of other dogs on this team that are ready to go to war. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk about a guy like Nico. I mean, he's your prototypical, you talk about the meme of T.O. when he's crying, talking about Terry Romo. That's my quarterback. Whatever you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how this team feels about freaking Nico. Okay, he's a guy people are willing to run through a brick wall for.
Yeah.
You talk about unfazed. Okay, put this guy in the daggum front lines. His heart rate ain't elevated.
Not at all.
A freaking beat. You know what I mean? Like he said it on the whatever the show was, Boston Prize. He said it. Hey, what game are you looking forward to? So I can't go to Athens, beat down on those daggum dogs. Okay, I can't go beat those daggum dogs. Like he loves that type of environment. He thrives off that. Okay, cool, laid back California guy. Who you think about? You think about Casey Clausen. Okay, guy that I don't think ever lost to Florida. Calm, cool, collected. Nico's that same deal.
Yeah.
And I think this whole team's ready to play that game. So yeah, super excited about that one. I think people are sleeping on Tennessee. Again, all the reason. Hey, we had a whole video. We talked about the question marks, so I can understand why maybe an outsider would feel the way they do. But we know this team. We know these guys. We know who they are. We feel really, really confident about this team's ability to go out here and beat anybody lines up across from them. And I think that's one thing we'll be able to say going into the season. We maybe go back to maybe the Pruitt years, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's games when, we had to play Bama or whoever it was, and we felt like, hey, not much of a chance. Okay, we're going to watch it. We're going to have faith, believe. Yeah. Not much of a chance. I don't think there's anybody who can line up across from us this season where you feel like Tennessee has no shot to win it.
Yeah.
So excited for the season.
Absolutely. Yeah. I cannot wait to get it started. And, I think that's a good note for us to end it off of because I just got real fired up. So we will have some more content coming out here, y'all. We are very, very busy. We got 1,000,001 things going on, but, we're doing our best to get some more content out to y'all. So we're working on several things right here behind the scenes. We will be getting back to the comments. I know that I haven't been able to get back to them as quickly as I normally do, but I am about to go back and get to pretty much all of them. So thank y'all for continuing to rock with us. Please make sure, as always, to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.